There's someone you want, not just physically. You want them to feel something when you walk in the room. You want the air to change. You want them to look up from whatever they're doing and think, you. And here's what's killing you. You don't know why it's not happening. You're not unattractive, you're not boring, but something isn't clicking and you can feel it. That gap between where you are and where you want to be with her. I know that feeling. 500 years ago, Niccolo Machiavelli sat in a small study in San Cassiano, exiled, humiliated, stripped of everything, and he started writing down what he'd actually observed about human nature. Not what people said moved them, what actually did. He watched courts, negotiations, alliances. He saw what made people lean in and what made them pull away. What he found would embarrass most modern dating coaches, because the secret to attraction, real, bone-deep, can't stop thinking about you attraction, has nothing to do with your looks, your height, your bank account. It has everything to do with how you make someone feel inside their own head. None of what I'm about to share is about tactics you run on someone. It's about the man you actually become. That distinction matters more than anything else in this conversation. Today, I'm giving you what Machiavelli knew, what Hobbes understood about human connection, what the ancient Romans practiced without ever needing a word for it. First, let me show you what you've been doing wrong, and why it was never your fault. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most men, good men, smart men, they approach attraction like a negotiation. They show up with credentials. They demonstrate value. They say the right things, compliment her eyes, ask about her day, make themselves available, reliable, safe. And she friend-zones them. Why? Because Machiavelli saw this exact dynamic, not in romance, but in politics. In The Prince, he wrote that a ruler who is loved for his generosity alone will eventually be despised for it. Why? Because generosity without inner conviction reads as neediness. Openness without depth reads as desperation. And desperation, she can sense it before you open your mouth. Think about it this way. Your tone of voice carries information she processes before your words even register. When you speak to impress her, your pitch rises slightly, your pace quickens, you fill silences because silence feels dangerous to you. And every single one of those microsignals says the same thing. I need your approval to feel okay. That's not attractive. That's a weight she'd have to carry. Hobbes wrote in Leviathan that people are drawn to those who project inner stability, not dominance, but the kind of settled confidence that suggests someone can handle difficulty. The distinction matters enormously. Stability is simply this: comfort in your own presence, the ability to let a silence sit without flinching. She doesn't want your resume. She wants to feel that you are the most interesting thing in the room. And right now, you're performing for her instead of existing near her. There's a difference. You feel it every time it goes wrong. Say this with me. I attract by presence, not performance. But here's where it gets worse. Because the thing you've been told to do, be open, be vulnerable, lead with emotion early, that advice, it's not just incomplete, it's backwards in ways you haven't considered yet, and I can prove it. You've been told that emotional availability is the key. Show her who you really are, open up fast, build connection through vulnerability. Rousseau believed something like this, that authenticity and transparent feeling were the highest expression of the human soul. Beautiful philosophy, genuinely beautiful, but Rousseau wrote the social contract for societies built on collective trust. He wasn't thinking about desire, he was thinking about governance. And someone, somewhere along the line, took his ideas about civic virtue and transplanted them into dating advice. The result has been a genuine mismatch. Men taught one thing about connection, experiencing something entirely different in practice. Because desire, actual desire, is not built on comfort alone. It's built on tension. Aristotle understood this. In his Rhetoric, he described how the mind reaches toward what it hasn't fully grasped. The imagination is activated by incompleteness, by suggestion, by the thing almost said. A woman who knows everything about you has nothing left to discover, And discovery, the anticipation of discovery, that's where desire lives. Machiavelli studied figures like Cesare Borgia closely, and what fascinated him wasn't Borgia's ruthlessness. Machiavelli himself eventually questioned the sustainability of that, but his self-containment. Borgia didn't perform for approval. He didn't need the room's validation to feel steady. That self-possession is what drew people toward him. The lesson isn't to intimidate anyone, it's to stop seeking permission to exist. Stop. Everything I just said? That's only half true. Because I'm not telling you to be cold. I'm not telling you to withhold affection or play games. That's not depth. That's just damage. And men who manufacture distance aren't mysterious. They're exhausting. Anyone who's been on the receiving end of that knows exactly what I mean. What I'm telling you is this. There's a difference between emotional unavailability and emotional depth. Real depth means you have an interior life rich enough that you don't pour everything out in the first hour. Not because you're withholding, because you're genuinely interesting. And genuinely interesting people reveal themselves over time, naturally, without strategy. That's what she's drawn to, not a man running a script, a man who actually has somewhere to be in his own life. Repeat after me. My presence is something I grow into, not something I perform. And once you understand that, you can't unsee it. Because now every interaction looks different. Now you start to see exactly how to use your voice, your eyes, your words, not to produce an effect, but to actually connect. And what Montesquieu understood about balance, about structure, about the counterweights that keep any dynamic from tipping into either coldness or neediness, that changes everything. Here's what actually works, and here's why it works. Montesquieu's great insight in the spirit of the laws was that no single force should dominate unchecked, that power needs counterweights to remain vital. Apply that to attraction and it looks like this. Warmth balanced by depth. Strength balanced by tenderness. Humor balanced by substance. You're not one thing. You're a system in balance. And she'll spend the whole conversation trying to understand you and finding more than she expected. So let's get concrete. Your voice first. Lower your pace by about 20%. Let your sentences end with weight, not with a rising inflection that turns every statement into a question seeking approval. Vocal confidence isn't volume, it's certainty. When you speak like you have things you believe and places you're going, her nervous system responds. This isn't manipulation, it's the oldest signal in the biological record. Certainty feels steady. Steady feels good. Good feels like you. Your eyes next. Eye contact held a beat longer than expected creates connection. It communicates presence. Not staring, not dominance performance, simply the willingness to stay in the moment without anxiety, without looking away to manage your own discomfort. That one choice communicates more than 10 compliments. It says, I'm here. I'm not afraid of this moment. And I find you worth my full attention. Now, compliments. This is where most men waste enormous opportunity. You tell her she's beautiful. Fine, she said it before. It lands, and then it slides away. But you pay attention during the conversation, and you notice how she listens, leaning in, asking the follow-up question, remembering the small detail you mentioned early on. And you say, you actually listen. That's rarer than you know. Now, you've done something different. You've seen her, not her surface, but her character. Max Weber called this the recognition of someone's inner legitimacy. You've conferred value not on her appearance, but on her personhood. She'll remember that sentence long after she's forgotten your face. And then there's humor. Not rehearsed jokes, genuine playfulness. Tacitus wrote of certain Roman commanders that they could make their soldiers laugh and then make them believe in the same afternoon. That's the range you're after. Light and serious, warm and grounded, funny and felt. Humor is trust building at speed. It says, I'm comfortable, you're safe, and this is going to be real. Put it all together. Here's the framework Machiavelli observed, Hobbes theorized, and Montesquieu balanced. Be genuinely present, not performing presence. Be warm without being indiscriminately available. Let her feel chosen, not because you're executing a strategy, but because you've been actually paying attention. Compliment what she is, not just how she looks. Speak with conviction. Stay in eye contact. Have an interior life rich enough that not everything spills out at once. And here's what ties it all together. Everything here only works if it's real. The moment you treat these as tricks to run on someone, they stop working, and you become someone you don't want to be. The goal was never to manufacture attraction. It was to become someone who naturally generates it by being fully, honestly, interestingly himself. You came here feeling invisible, feeling like you were doing everything right and getting nothing back. Now you see that the signal was miscalibrated, not the man. You were offering the right things in the wrong frequency, and now you know how to tune it. If this shifted something in you, if you felt that click of recognition, this isn't meant to stay hidden. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like it if it landed. Subscribe because there's more you need to know. And remember what Machiavelli wrote, that fortune favors the bold, yes, but only the bold who understand the terrain. Know yourself first, then move with precision. That's not manipulation, that's mastery.